Thanks, everybody, for joining us this morning. It's great to see everybody. It's been a while since we've been together. It's honestly been a while since our staff's been together as well. We're doing this, I think, 3 times a week. We have one later on this afternoon as a staff, and then offense and defense, they meet pretty much every day, and then I pop in and out. So it's been fun to see our staff, and I know they're working hard. I know our players are working hard. It's obviously unprecedented times, but it's becoming a new normal, and everybody's kind of getting into a routine. I'm into a routine, even though every day is a little different. And we're very optimistic that we're going to play football this year. We just don't know when. And so we just got to make sure that we are ready as a staff to go at any time and make sure our players are ready as well. So we'll open it up.
Hey, Coach, it's Matt Hall. I don't want to make you single out any player. I'm sure tons of guys have been great in this time, but have there been any new players or different names than you would have expected that have kind of stepped up and shown you leadership in this unique circumstance?
A guy that probably just doesn't get mentioned a whole lot is Brock Monty. I think Brock does a phenomenal job of leading and setting things out there and calling teammates. And probably Noah Johnson would be the other one. You know, the Wyatts and Schylers are always doing that, and Joaquin and stuff. But probably Noah and Brock.
We'll go Fritchen and then Mick.
Sorry, still trying to get used to this. What has been your message to the team? Talking with Elijah and Wyatt in the last couple of days, they said that you guys are able to meet as an entire team. I'm just curious what your overall theme and message is to the guys.
Well, we hit every area that we need to hit in a team meeting. You know, it gives us a chance for our academic counselors to visit with them, our strength and conditioning staff, our nutrition staff, Mindy and Matt in athletic training. I just keep trying to impress upon the guys of over communicating with each other and reach out to each other. Not every day is a great day. I know it. I know there's some struggles to get up in the morning and do stuff by yourself, to reach out to teammates, reach out not only to the leaders on your side of the ball, but reach out to somebody on the other side of the ball that you have a ton of respect for and say, hey, how are you handling this? Help me out today. I'm struggling. And so I think our communication as a whole has been challenged, but I think I've been really pleased with our response from our guys.
And if I could just follow up, you know, every day is a new day, but what are maybe some of the pressing questions in your mind as you follow along the developments regarding COVID-19 and just the way of American life?
Oh, just following all the orders, especially what our governors are saying. You know, I know they came out with something last night with a couple of different phases to maybe come back to some normalcy. And, you know, maybe Kansas is one of those states that can get to a phase 1 a little bit quicker. But, you know, I try not to look too far ahead, and I don't want to look too far ahead because I don't want somebody to determine what we're going to do in September on April 17th. You know, I still think there's so much time and so much that we don't know that I want to remain optimistic but remain patient.
Coach Mick Schaefer, 41 Action News in Kansas City. I know missing this time is big for a lot of positions, say your offensive line, where you're going to be looking for a lot of new starters. Just wondering, though, how big of a perk is it having a quarterback returning if you are going to miss most of spring ball, if you are going to miss chunks, say, of summer ball and maybe have to ramp up to this thing rather quickly? How much of a perk is it having Skyler back, a guy that started for multiple years?
Really important. That has been really important because I know from a leadership standpoint, he's reaching out to everybody on that side of the ball and visiting with our skill guys and continuing to watch film with those guys, continuing to challenge those guys to stay in the playbook, continuing to challenge them to watch, whether it be an early non-conference opponent or an early conference opponent. Without a doubt, not having the spring with the offensive line, it's probably been more challenging for Coach Riley. You know, he utilizes his meeting time that he does get per the NCAA to the fullest to make sure that those guys are just understanding it. And it's never as easy when you're learning on the grass, but I know that Rouse is doing a good job with those guys.
We'll go to Kurtz and then Harold.
Yeah. Hey, Coach. Good to see you. Thanks for doing this. How much do you have to prepare to, I guess, maybe dumb things down, for lack of a better word, on offense and defense with what you're trying to install, just knowing that you won't have as much time and you won't have the spring?
Yeah, we've talked about that extensively on both sides of the ball. To Mick's question, I think having a quarterback back allows you to probably be a little more complex. But how much can the O-line handle? I just think having Skyler back with the communication that he has with a lot of wide receivers and tight ends that'll be available that have played will help us. I've talked to Coach Klanderman. We're not changing wholesale on defense. We are tweaking some things that Joe just feels more comfortable with. But the kids wouldn't know it. The general fan wouldn't know it. We'll still look the same. But we have talked to those guys, whether it's a new seat, where Denzel was at, or a new somebody on the defensive line, we have to make sure that our guys can play fast. And so probably defensively will be a little bit simpler to start.
Hey, Coach. Harold from Fox 4. How you doing? Hope your family's all right, by the way.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, just a question regarding, obviously, with COVID-19 going on. If, say, perchance the fall has to get, set back to maybe have to push back to an October, November, even next year start, what do you feel like would be a proficient amount of time for you guys to prepare going into a season, even if the school might be closed down in the summer? How do you feel that you would go across that?
Yeah, I had a conversation with Gene about that the other day, assuming we would start on time, and I don't know if that's an accurate deal. If we were in by July 13th, I think we could start practice on August 1st. Now take that back however you'd want to take it if we end up starting the end of September. That's the challenge for everybody and for our players, is not knowing when that would be. We may get a call and have a week before we come in, or 2 weeks from a quarantine standpoint. But we have so many guys on our staff that have such great experience. I talked to Tui and Buddy and Van about this. When we played college ball from late 80s to around 90, everybody did stuff on their own in the summer anyway, and you better come in on August 1st and be ready to go. Now, you had 2 days and sometimes 3 days to get yourself in shape, but everybody was challenged. And that's what we've kind of mentioned to our guys, is just be ready when that time comes.
Go ahead, Kellis.
Hey, Chris, I got two for you here. First off, I kind of want to know, how much do you just personally miss right now? And then after that, can you tell me who are some of the guys you're really looking forward to seeing when let's get going on both the offensive line and defensive line?
Well, I just miss seeing the guys on a daily basis. I'm not in on the position meetings right now because I have so many other things to do. And so I don't get the chance to go through with J-Ray and talk to the wide receivers, or with Mess with the tight ends, or Joe with the safeties. So I miss that camaraderie on a daily basis. Offensive line, I was excited to see a bunch of guys, but I was really excited to see what Katori could do. I know that he had put himself in a really good position to get himself into shape. I'm excited to see what Noah Johnson can do. Christian Duffy. There's a bunch of guys there. Ben Adler, who's been in the mix a little bit. So, and then on the defensive line, I was really pleased with the progress, and he played a little bit last year of what Eli Huggins has done. I think Eli is primed to have an exceptional season, and he and Drew Wiley, who played some last year behind Trey and Mitty, I think are going to be really good players for us.
We'll go to Dennis and then Scott Fritchen again.
Hey, Chris, hope you're well. I had a question, then a follow-up. You just touched on it. Do you think this season, the way things are going so far, might be a template for what you just referenced? Back in the day, students were just sent home with a list of things to accomplish. In other words, that it doesn't become an 11 or 12-month-a-year sport.
It might become that. Guys, I talked to a lot of the guys in the NFL, and I talked to Carson Wentz just last week, and it's like, you guys are starting to understand that they have to do this on their own unless they have a professional trainer, and they may have the money to do that in time. But in essence, you have to be your own boss. this time of year and get yourself in shape. I will be really interested to see, assuming we start somewhat close to on time or even a few weeks late, the rate of injuries, the rate of pulls, the rate of hamstrings and those things, because there is, that out there with overtraining 12 months out of the year. And, obviously we are all bigger, faster, stronger, much bigger, faster, and stronger than the guys that on our staff that we were talking about when we came in August. But grand scheme, I thought we were always healthier too. And so it'll be interesting to see the data that comes back at the end of this year whenever we play it, as far as the injuries, especially soft tissue.
And also, as a follow-up, you're one of the few guys in the country that have played 15 games in a season. Can you imagine playing 2 seasons in some form or fashion in a calendar year?
You're exactly right. We've played so much football, and I've been involved in so much football over the last decade that I don't fear that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to play football, and I know the guys do too. We'd love to have a traditional calendar season, and we still are hopeful for a traditional calendar season. If we don't have a traditional calendar season, it will stress those guys, and it will stress the depth on teams. But I believe if we end up having to play that non-traditional season, you're going to see a lot of players play in that first half, so to speak, see what they have for the next year, because you're going to utilize it for the fall of 2021 in essence. And I would just fear that, as far as if a kid gets an ACL in February in game 3, he's essentially missing 2 full seasons.
And just real quick, you just popped something into my mind. What if you're a junior going into the draft, and maybe a high-rated, senior? You've got a decision to make.
Absolutely. And I don't know, unless they feel like they need to get film out there, it all would depend on what those NFL scouts and people are saying of where they project them at.
Right. Thank you.
You bet.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, Chris, I'm curious. I'm hearing stories about Kansas State football players using milk jugs to lift weights with, and PVC pipe and things like that. What can you say just about the strides of your kids to want to be able to work out, to want to be able to do the right thing during this time when there's so much uncertainty out there? What kind of reports are you hearing about how they've been able to maintain as far as their conditioning goes?
Hey, Scott, we're all as coaches doing the same thing, using whatever we can to get a workout in too, because we don't have that access. But I credit Chris Dawson and our staff of reaching out to these guys each week and finding out what they have, and then designing a plan around that. Some guys are fortunate enough to have some weights. Some guys just have some bands. Some guys, to your point, maybe are doing it unconventionally with milk jugs or cement blocks, whatever it may be. And that's where, I think Chris Dawson is as good as there is in the country of modifying whatever workout it is for a young man. And then from a running standpoint, everybody has the ability to run. And there's in my mind, there's not an excuse to not be in really good cardio shape, because that's something that everybody has the ability to do.
How have you been able to get the message out to recruits, to show them that K-State is unique, that they need to be a part of this, and that life is going to go on and they're going to have a home here?
Well, I believe that's where our staff has been the busiest. We're limited in the amount of time and hours that we can be with our own players via Zoom meetings, and we're checking up on them, non-football related things. But our biggest emphasis is really on recruiting right now, simply because we lost the month of February because of that turning into a dead period this year. And so we had so many dates circled once we came back from spring break. Well, we didn't get to come back from spring break, and we had a bunch of junior days throughout the entire month of March and up until really the spring game in mid-April. We had a bunch of them. So we're not able to have those. So we're kind of bringing those junior days to those young men. And we're sending things out, and they're calling us, and we're showing them things the best we can. We're doing some facility virtual tours ourselves, and That's what we have to do because we have great people at Kansas State. We have great facilities at Kansas State, and we have to be able to show those, and this is the perfect time for us to do it.
Go to Karen and then Matt.
Okay, I have two things. Hi, Coach Klieman. How are you?
Great, Karen. How are you?
Terrific. I wanted to ask you about recruiting. You talked about what you can show these young people, but through a screen like this, how can you read them to see if their personality, the way they go about things, is a perfect fit for your program?
It's difficult, there's no question. But the more interaction and contact that we can have with those young men, I believe that shows us the interest. If we're struggling to have those guys get back in touch with us, probably not working out for us. The guys that I know that our staff are talking to have been really easy to reach. And whether it's through a text or something on social media, those kids are getting back to us, showing us the interest. And I know our staff is doing a tremendous job, both sides of the ball of connecting with guys and building relationships, because that's what recruiting is. It's building relationships. Everybody's got nice facilities. Unfortunately, nobody's seeing those facilities right now, so you better build a great relationship.
And Coach, you mentioned just a little bit ago about the milk jugs and stuff. What's the most creative thing you've heard on your team a player doing to work out?
Oh, people! I can't remember who it was. It was pushing a pickup truck in his back of his yard. I can't remember who it was. I'd have to ask Coach Dawson. But just trying to work on some leg strength and leg squats and leg drive and pushing the truck.
Okay, I didn't know if you had any guys who were on a farm or something trying to outrun a mule or something. I wasn't quite sure if you heard any kind of fun
I haven't heard
story.
that one. No, I haven't heard that one. I'm sure there's out there though.
Thanks, Coach.
Go ahead, Matt.
Coach, we certainly don't know how long this will go on, but do you worry about, the lack of evaluation periods? And then what kind of things can you do to replace some of that in person, whether it's at camps or whatnot, with seeing those kids?
It will probably change the landscape for everybody. We have a number of, whether it's us at satellite camps or having kids come to our campus. I think it'll be interesting to see, based on when high school football ends up getting started, do we have to send more guys out on a Friday night than we typically would, whether you're home or away, just so that you can get an evaluation. And maybe the NCAA will open some more things up. Maybe they'll allow some kids to visit in August, which they typically wouldn't, and at least get around people. But the evaluation tool, you're gonna have to be really sharp on watching video from a junior that you've liked, but you want to see senior film or wanted to see it at camp as a senior. Now we're going to have to go out and find those guys and watch a game.
We'll go to Kurtz and then Ryan Black.
Yeah, coaches, is there a position group you feel like is most affected or least affected by not having spring ball for you guys?
Yeah, without question, the offensive line, just because we had so many new guys there, and they're a close-knit group of guys. And I know that, I look at Noah Johnson and Josh Rivas, of two guys that are older, that are leaders, that Josh has played some, and Noah's just a tremendous leader of trying to connect all those guys together so that they're around each other more. Because that's, whether it's on a Zoom, just the offensive lineman watching something without Coach Riley, you have to build cohesion there on that offensive line, and that's probably the biggest area.
Okay, I can go on, Kenny.
Yep, Ryan, go ahead.
Hey, Chris, how you doing today?
Good, Ryan.
I've got a couple of staffing related questions. I guess my first one would be, I know this is such an odd time for everybody, but how has it been getting to work with Steve again, and maybe what he was able to do at all with the linebackers group before you guys had to break?
Really nothing other than meeting a few on his interview. He was able to meet the older guys, Eli J-Ball, and Fletch on his interview. It's been awesome being back with Steve. He and I have worked together for a few years in a couple of those 15-game seasons where we're in the defensive staff room all the time. So he and I became really close. And I know he's excited about being here. He's going to add so much to our defense. And I know that he's enjoyed being on the Zoom meetings and learning the personalities of the linebackers, because we have some unique personalities of a bunch of fun guys in there and a pretty talented group. So I'm excited for him. I wish he'd have gotten a chance to actually work with them on the field, but that'll come in time.
And then my follow-up would be, I asked Joe the other day about just the hire itself, him getting promoted to defensive coordinator, and he said that he essentially had been auditioning to be a defensive coordinator for 6 years. So just how easy of a hire was that for you, just going ahead and promoting him to DC?
Well, I've obviously been really close with Joe and watched him work with Coach Ince at North Dakota State for my 5 years there, and then coming here and watching him interact with Scotty and have that same kind of voice. And he was ready a couple of years ago for sure. We had Coach Ince that ended up being the head coach at North Dakota State, and then coming here learning another way of doing things from Scotty has helped him. And that's the one thing I so appreciate about Joe. He's not an ego guy. He wants to be a sponge. He wants to learn as much as he can. He wants to have other guys' input. And I was excited for him because he deserved the opportunity. He's been a part of an awful lot of national championships and coached an awful lot of football. And you ask any of those safeties about Joe in a meeting room, and there's not a more detailed, organized guy on our staff as far as just putting the finer details together on a game plan and challenging guys. And so I was pleased to have him be elevated to defensive coordinator. And then it's just been the world to me to have Van as the assistant head coach. Van has helped me so much, and Van's going to be a college head coach fairly soon. And that was a great role for him and a great role for me to have him in, because I have so many things. I have so much respect for Van and been able to bounce so many things off of him.
We'll go to Mitch and then Danny.
Hey, Chris, Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. How are you? I wanted to ask you about characteristics that you learned of your, what kind of characteristics did you see from your team in the first year that pleases you about how you think their ability is to, roll through this kind of adversity or really any kind of adversity that they face? And then also, does this magnify at all this situation we're in now, the importance of having those bowl practices?
Well, the thing I learned the most is we have great buy-in amongst our guys, and we developed a great relationship really fast with all of our team. All of our coaches did, and so I think there's a great trust there, us in them and them in us. And so I know that that will help us through this time. The bowl practices were very good to help, especially the young guys, when we would go to just young guys kind of scrimmaging against each other. Unfortunately, playing the opponent we did with Navy, we didn't get a chance to work every day on our base defense because you have to do something totally different to defend the option. And so that was probably not as, other than the fact that we weren't practicing what we are going to play for 12 weeks out of the season next year. But just the fact that those guys were getting the extra practices, I think, helped, as well as the extra meetings. And I'm excited because I know that with the seniors we have coming back, with the tremendous leadership that those guys have, and those guys are, and I always tell these guys, I've said it from the day I got here, you got to get invested in the program, and it's your program. And the more you're invested in the program, the more you're going to get out of it. And those guys have taken the ownership that I've given them, and during this time have reached out to each other, reached out to a younger guy, reached out to somebody at a different position to help those guys through this.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Danny.
Hey, Coach. My question is kind of a broad question, but I want to get your opinion from maybe a national perspective, but also from a college perspective, why you think it's important to have a football season this year.
Well, it's kind of the fabric of our society. I would hate to imagine going through a fall and not driving by a high school stadium or having my son, who's going to be a junior at Manhattan High, getting ready for a high school practice and high school season, because that is that is so much fun. And those kids, they don't know how many years they're playing in as a young player. And so I think it's so important for those guys to have that ability to compete and be on a team from a younger player's perspective. You know, when you look at the college and the NFL, our world needs sports. They need every sport, and football brings everybody together. Now, that may be unique this year if it does bring everybody together, but in the same respect, we have to find a way to play it, I think, financially as much as anything, because it will help every other sport, and it'll help us and help our university from the revenue standpoint. And I just know this. When my last game I played, I was a senior, and man, I cried my eyes out when I finished up playing. I knew I wasn't playing at the next level, and I see all these seniors that we have that have aspirations, and maybe they will get a chance to play at the next level, to have things taken away and maybe not play full 12 games or whatever that may be, and all of a sudden they get it cut short. It's a game that's only played for so long, and you only get so many opportunities every year. You only typically play 12 in 365 days. That's a tough pill to swallow if we can't have it.
Thanks, Coach.
You bet.
We'll wrap it up with Kellis and then Arnie.
Chris, do you think it'll be feasible at all for teams to start practicing before general students are allowed back on campus?
Yeah, I do. I think it probably is going to have to be that way. And we may play in front of an empty stadium. I know that nobody wants to have that happen. But you know, if we are allowed to bring, I don't know, groups of 50 or less back, we could at least get a weight workout in and roll them in groups. You know, based on all the testing and those things that are not my area of expertise, we are very hopeful that we're able, at some point, being able to bring our players back, and probably before the general students would come back.
Go ahead, Arnie.
Yeah, you mentioned the financial aspect of it earlier. I was curious, with the uncertain times and just the loss of revenue and anything, have you had to make any budget adjustments or anything like that, or is it pretty much business as usual in that respect?
No, we're going to have to make some. You know, we haven't been pressed upon that. We know we've received some things that said we are going to make some cuts, but we're still kind of going through all those scenarios of where we are going to make some cuts. But I think, once again, we want to know what we're going to deal with come fall, and we don't want to do something in April that all of a sudden we say, oh, we didn't really have to do that. And I think that's the whole landscape of this environment is, I know that we have to have time to make decisions, but I think it's too early to cancel anything or make that kind of drastic adjustment on April 17th.
Thanks.
One more with Ryan Black.
Hey, Chris. Yeah, this is the first time I've had a chance to talk to you since this happened. So or in a way, it didn't happen. But I'm just very curious. So, you know, there are all these reports out there at the end of February that Chris Dawson had interviewed for Alabama's vacancy, and he obviously ended up staying here. But, you know, if he had left essentially the first week of March, and then maybe 10 days later is when all this stuff happened with the pandemic, I mean, how costly would that have been to your program if you lose your strength and conditioning coach, and now you guys are gone, and they don't have any idea who the new program coordinator is going to be?
Well, we don't have to worry about that, Ryan, because he's here.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing really to answer on it. And I'm so excited that Chris is with us and his staff, and he's going to get opportunities. Like I said, I think he's the best in the country. He's going to get opportunities, but he's also very rooted into K-State football and loves our players and loves the community. So I'm happy he's staying.